all natural. So welcome everybody to the inaugural episode of a new podcast. Oh, wait, something feels weird. Hold on. Oh, that's better. This
Good.
This feels a lot better. I don't like when people are taller than me. So yeah, welcome to our inaugural episode. Inaugular? I can't even say that word right.
Inaugural.
You got it.
Inaugural.
You should be running this thing. So I'm Zach.
I'm Adam.
And this is Looking at Cinema. So what film are we going to be looking at today, Adam?
We're looking at The Vast of Night.
Number, please.
Hello? Is this Ray? Large object holding over my land like a tornado.
Vast of Night. This is a nice little gem from 2019 you guys might have missed. It was written and directed and produced by Andrew Patterson. First-time director. I expect big things from him in the future.
I do too.
So it was made in 2019. It stars Sierra, I'm going to butcher her name, Sarah McCormick, I believe, and Jake
You're going to butcher
Horowitz.
McCormick.
I know, well, that's my handwriting's fault. That is no fault of her name. That's just I can't read my own handwriting. But she was like 21 when they made this film. I would not have guessed that in a million years. But yeah, first time producer, writer, director. I was pretty impressed, at least with the whatever you think of the movie itself. The production, I thought was pretty spot on. It was also $700,000 budget, so less than $1 million.
That's pretty awesome, and it doesn't show.
No,
Yeah,
no,
it looks like a high level production.
No,
so
for real.
$700,000. That went a long way.
So what kind of movie is this, Adam? Like what is The Vast of Night?
It's garbage.
We're starting throwing punches, but just in general, what kind of movie is it, other than a crappy one?
It's I guess you would call it sci-fi in the big realm of it. It's kind of done in the Twilight Zone style, but
very much a period piece too. Like it feels like the 1950s. Like it's very much about the period. I think.
Does. And we'll get into the specifics of that, but I did think they did a pretty good job with that. It does feel like the 1950s.
Oh hell yeah! And just some basics about it. It's set in the 1950s in New Mexico, and it's like loosely based on some incidents of like people seeing fire in the sky, like in the 60s, and there were some weird disappearances that happened in some town in like Oklahoma, and they found like empty cars and like weird things like that. So that very loosely, sort of inspired the story here. But that's basically Vast of Night. That's an overall view. So it sounds like you're not a fan.
I'm not a fan. I don't want to be too harsh because it's a first-time director, writer, producer, and all of that, and a $700 budget. So with all that considered,
$700,000.
$700. Did I say $700?
That would be really impressive.
That changes my opinion completely.
Well, shit. Now I like it.
Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh on it being. It seems typical of a first-time director to me. Like there's a lot of experimentation and different kind of style approaches and ideas kind of going around, but it hasn't
throwing
really
stuff on the wall, kind of vibe. Like just
throwing stuff on,
like throwing
just
noodles on the wall,
seeing what'll stick. Yeah. I definitely felt that, and that's fun. But overall, I did not enjoy the experience of the movie. So
heard that. Well, I'm coming from the opposite angle. I really loved it. I loved all those first-time director vibes of just like there's stuff in this movie that you've really never seen before in a movie. Like you've seen stuff like it, sure, but there's stylistic choices like camera movements, like really long takes, and really like intricate like dialogue scenes that are pieced together that just don't really feel like any other movie I've ever seen. I liked it. I really liked it overall. I like that it's not, it doesn't like shove, we can get into this later, but it doesn't really tell you what's going on. You just kind of like see it from these characters' points of view, and you have to fill in the blanks, Mm-hmm. So I really like that. But man, I loved it. Yeah. I'm curious to find out more details of why you didn't like it. As
Yeah,
we go,
so
but,
I chose this movie to talk about because I knew it's one of the few movies that we disagree on.
yeah.
So
Yeah, we agree a lot. So
I know we wanted to do this because we've always enjoyed talking about movies. We've known each other our whole lives and have always enjoyed talking about movies. And for the most part, we agree. And then I thought if we're going to do a podcast or an interview or discussion about a movie, it would be fun to kind of approach it from two different angles and see and have a more interesting conversation. I thought if it was something we disagreed on. So
for sure,
it's not. I'm not just a hater.
No, I know, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to start a podcast with you is because you know your stuff. Like you grew up in the cinema. You grew up looking at cinema, as it were.
I did grow up looking at cinema. I very literally grew up in a movie theater.
Yeah, his parents worked at movie theater. His mom worked at a movie theater, and then you worked at a movie theater for a long time.
17 years.
For a very long time.
And so, yeah, I have some experience working in the movie theater. I don't know that qualifies me.
Well, you've seen a lot of movies.
I've seen a lot of movies. That's what qualifies me to talk about movies. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of movies.
Yeah.
So that is the basis of my opinion. I've watched a lot of them.
Yeah, maybe since this is our first episode, so the viewers kind of get an idea of what you like. What are maybe your top 2 or 3 movies, or just some movies that you love growing up?
I've had a hard time with that.
I know I surprised you with that question.
I kind of narrow it into categories.
Yeah.
As far as experience, I think Back to the Future is my all-time favorite movie. It kind of was the best of that old school Hollywood production feel, and the most fun I enjoyed. It came out the year I was born too.
There was a lot of good movies at that time. In the 70s and 80s was amazing.
Yeah, that was like Spielberg's heyday. Mm-hmm. So Back to the Future, is in the top 3, and then Bottle Rocket.
Oh yeah, Wes Anderson.
There's a toss up between a lot of the early Wes Anderson movies, but I think Bottle Rocket was my favorite, just because every time I've watched it, I've noticed something different, or I caught something in it that I didn't see the first time, and I've never been disappointed on a viewing of Bottle Rocket.
That's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, were you there when we picked that out kind of randomly? We didn't even know what we were getting into, or me and Danny did. I'm not sure if you.
No.
How did you see
I think I was
Bottle
living in Maine at the time, and I worked at a movie gallery, and in a brief stint in between working at the movie theater and going back to the movie theater, I worked at movie gallery, and took it home one night. And I actually didn't really like it the first time I saw it. I don't think I knew what it was at all, or what it was going for, and so I just put it on as a movie late at night. I was watching and was half paying attention to it and not really following the story or anything. And I think I ended up falling asleep in it, and then you guys were telling me oh, you have to see Bottle Rocket, and kept going on and on about it. So I was like, I should watch it again. Yeah. And you were right. It was an awesome movie.
Heck yeah. Is there any other ones that you can think of that are top tier?
Let's see, in recent times, I think Nightcrawler is one that comes to mind.
That is an intense movie.
Yeah.
Well, that's very different than the other choices.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, what are some of the newer movies that I've really enjoyed?
And you like a wide range of styles.
Yeah.
And
everything Edgar Wright does.
Oh yeah, very fun.
I don't think he's made a movie I haven't liked, and then I always like Coen Brothers. Mm-hmm. So.
Heck yeah, yeah, and just I'll give you a brief one on mine. I remember Pulp Fiction. Actually, not Pulp Fiction. Reservoir Dogs was one of the first movies I saw, and was whoa, that's an art movie. It made me think about movies differently. That and Clerks, just knowing that some dude could do that and just piece together a movie out of passion, and really helped me see cinema from the other side, helped me look at cinema a different way. But yeah, those are definitely top tier, and then probably Life Aquatic or Synecdoche, New York are top number 1 movie ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't classified Life Aquatic as my favorite Wes Anderson movie, but I do consider it his masterpiece.
It's become
even though it's
mine,
not my
yeah.
favorite. It's like
It's his
there's no
Citizen
denying how great it is.
What's going on? There's something in the sky.
Let's dive into the specifics. Like I've got some notes here that I wrote in order as the movie went, so it kind of follows the order.
Okay.
Like I love the beginning, how it just throws you in the middle of it. But at first, like I wasn't sure. Like when I first started the movie, because again, it's set in the 50s, and it's very heavily about the dialogue. And when the movie starts, the dialogue isn't really emphasized, and they're talking so fast that I was like, oh God, if the whole movie's like this, like, I don't know what this is gonna be like.
Of the skeleton. So just electric or the electric, because we can't roll if it's flickering.
I don't know. I was at supper.
Hey, how many times you want to tell me you're at supper, Betty? Yeah. Sam, what's Spartan Brothers buzz, man?
I don't know. It's just blinking in there.
All right, well, let's plug it in.
But in retrospect, going back, I love the intro. It just throws you into their world, these people on a busy night in a really small town, like all just like doing their thing. And you're kind of following the main guy. What was his name? I wrote it down.
Everett. Yeah.
Everett's kind of like the cool guy at the school, but he's got a job already, like running a radio station. So he kind of knows things about electronics, and he's like helping random people throughout the school. And you see him kind of interacting with people, and you kind of get to know the vibe of the town. But did you like the intro, or how it?
I like the style of the intro. So, so if we're talking about the structure of the story and the way that it was done, I thought it was too dialogue heavy. So that's one of my pet peeves with movies anyway, is when like so much of the exposition and story is driven by dialogue.
Right.
I feel weird. I feel like we're on a date on the same side of the table here.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn a little bit so we can look at each other. I thought it was, too much dialogue. I also didn't buy, like, I couldn't understand what was going on. I thought there was going to be some sort of turn with his character, because I didn't really buy, that he was the cool guy in the 1950s world that they've built. Like, he had this, like, kind of, like, this confidence about him that just didn't seem to fit the character.
Like he was way older than he was supposed to be.
Yeah, he was like beyond his years, and everybody just kind of accepted that he was, you know, the end-all, beat-all expert on anything technology, which he may have been, and they may have accepted that, but I think that there would have been some resentment in the other characters for him being so much, like, you know, smarter than them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we don't really see... Like, the only, like, we see, like, small glimpses at the beginning, but really we only get to see, like, how Faye thinks about him, like, the main character who just kind of worships him because he's, like, the older, cute guy who's into the things that she's interested in.
Yeah.
So I think you're seeing it more from her point of view than just, like, the whole town in general. We don't really see how other people think about him, except in, like, you know, just the brief little jokey interactions that we kind of see at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I guess so. I mean, I had some problems with Faye's character too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it wasn't made that clear why she would worship him. I mean, I guess they were both different. Like, they both had like this weird interest, but their difference was not really shown in their interactions with other people in the movie. Like, they were very comfortable. Everybody, like, really liked them, and they, like, you know, were very comfortable talking to everybody of all walks of life. Like, it goes through, like, everybody in this town at this basketball game. Like, all types of characters are there, and all of them seem to interact well with Everett and Faye. And so there's no, like, tension between them and the town.
True.
So there's no real explanation for their connection.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't explain why they want to leave town, like they keep talking about.
Oh, true. Well, and that's what I think, that's a lot of the world building that I feel like they're doing is really showing you that it's just like everyone in this town knows everyone kind of trusts everyone. It's like more innocent America than like we're used to. And I think that was a big, because that was like a running theme, was like technology and wanting to like touch like things outside of your surroundings, like, because, you know, back now we have the internet and we can find out anything ever, but this is before they would have even had a term for like aliens and in fact the word alien or anything like that is never said in the whole movie because they don't even have a concept of aliens or they think it's the Russians, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like that's kind of Faye's main driving force is that she's just interested in like science and the future and technology and like I know you didn't like it, but there's like a long scene where she's just describing like stuff from a Scientific American that she's read that's all
And
like,
it's all things that are currently happening.
yeah in our time.
Yeah.
And he doesn't believe like any of them except he believes them except the one that will happen, like the phone one, the one that he's like
I don't know if I believe about having your picture on a phone.
Yeah.
A little TV phone.
I don't believe that.
What? Here, you can see a picture
Sounds
of
like a
it.
space novel.
I know.
I think I agree with your mom. You know, she's a wise keeper. Actually, I believe the train tubes in the highways, but the tiny TV telephones, that's cuckoo.
But I can see where you're coming from. They weren't like super fleshed out characters. They were more like archetypes of like, this is like the 1950s. This is like a small town where everyone just trusts everyone and like gives you their address and says, yeah, just show up to my house. And like everyone just trusts everyone and lets people like kind of get away with stuff because there was no other, you know, there was no other in that town. There was just everyone that we know, you know. That was kind of like the vibes that I got from the intro, which is interesting in relation to the weirdness when that starts happening. But it takes a while before it's a lot of just setting up the town, and you don't even get it like a hint of the aliens until like 20 to 30 minutes in, if maybe longer, when she starts picking up messages like through the radios. But
there's definitely a lot of time given to developing the scene, like the town and the feel and everything of the world that they're living in. But I feel like that time could have been better used to kind of make some connections for a 2019 audience.
Right.
Because that's what I was thinking when I was watching it. It was like it definitely has that 1950s feel, but it also feels like it was written for a 1950s audience. And not really like bridging the gap between now and
well, lots of it was almost just straight like a radio play. They would even like cut the video out in certain scenes, and you would just listen to people talking, or how they like faded out during the I forget his name, but the guy who called in to tell the story originally, and then there's multiple times I want to say where they cut to black and you just hear basically someone telling a story. It's like it's very just much about like storytelling.
Yeah.
In the traditional sense.
And I didn't find their stories that intriguing. I don't know if I just couldn't get into the world that they were in, or into the mindset of the world that they were in. But like, I think it was Billy was the guy's name that called in.
Billy, yeah, you're right.
And his story, I had to rewind it like 2 or 3 times to follow his story, because I checked out and like missed parts of it, and I was like, wait, no, this is important. I need to know what he's saying here. But like the way that his story was told was, I mean, it was probably realistic.
Yeah,
for sure.
Very much so.
And maybe it was too realistic.
Yes, I have a story that might be helpful. I don't know, it may not be, but I'll go ahead and give it to you.
All right, Billy, well, we're listening.
Well, so I was in the military, and there were always jobs and work we didn't know anything about.
What do you mean?
I mean, we would get assigned to places without knowing where we were, to do things none of us understood.
They even have the tension in there about the race when he like admits that he's a black person.
I thought that was annoying.
You didn't like that?
No, I thought it was like it was forced in there, and it probably would have happened more naturally.
It felt natural to me.
Like,
well, because it was important to his story.
It was, but we already knew he was black.
Right.
Like, we could already tell.
But we're a 2019 audience.
Right. But he could have mentioned that in the way that he told the story, because he did say, everybody that worked on these details were either black or Mexican because nobody would believe us. And, that was a 2019 social statement, which would have been interesting, but it just was so out of left field and and it was kind of telling us some things that we already knew. So there were some elements of it that I felt like they didn't explain, and then there were some elements that I thought that they were treating me like I was stupid as a viewer. Yeah. And so it was just all over the place. But again, this is a first-time director. I don't I'll still watch his next movie.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't want people to know what we did for them.
Why do you think no one listens to you?
I think part of it's because I'm black. I'm sorry if that's a problem.
No, I don't think it is. I thought that might be the case. We've just never had a black caller before.
Well, I'm sorry. I should have probably told you that. But everyone on these details were black or Mexican. All of us doing sweat
You
work.
think they did that on purpose?
I know they did.
Why?
Because who's going to listen to us?
Everything that rubbed you like the wrong way, I just loved it.
Right.
I love that it was against the grain. I love that it didn't care if modern audiences would be bored by it. I love that it was just like, yep, we're just making this realistic 50s feeling movie and like, you know, deal with it. You know, like, because I mean, it was like science fiction, but not really, because that almost didn't even factor into the main points of the story. It was more about the mystery and the time period and just the way people in that time would interact. That was really what the movie was about.
Mm-hmm.
And the alien stuff was, or if you even want to think it was aliens, because it's never said, but whatever it is just kind of a mystery that kind of unfolds, you know, that they get sucked up into because they're interested in like the bigger world, you know.
Well, what I think is interesting in period pieces with older cultures and styles and everything like that is making the connection to now.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you look at it, we naturally look at a time and think that it was so different back then, and, you know, everybody was so different, but people are people.
Yeah.
Characters are really the same. They have the same kind of, like, inner workings and thought processes and ways of operating, and to be able to kind of hit those commonalities in those times, I think, is what would make that interesting. I thought, actually, the story would have been more interesting if it was told in a modern setting.
It couldn't have, though, because they didn't know what was happening. As soon as anything like that started happening, now people would go, oh, it's aliens.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the opposite of this movie, where
but
they're
are
just
we
like...
so? I don't know that we're so far... it's an element of taking things for granted. Mm-hmm. The idea that, you know, the world is how you see it, and there's nothing out there that can surprise us anymore. But if you could find some way of, you know, creating that same mystery in a modern world, even with that same Twilight Zone style, I thought would have been really interesting. I know it would have been a lot harder to tell that story because it's really hard to find something now that is...
Mm-hmm. Well, then it would just be Black Mirror, basically, and it would have to get really dark and depressing. Like, that's what I liked about it, is there wasn't really, like... You could look at it as the suspense or maybe a horror, very vaguely, but it's not really, because it's really more about wonder. Like, they're just kind of like... There's this thing that's happening and no one really understands it, and they just slowly are unfolding it. And just because of where they happen to be, like in their positions, because they both work at these places, like Faye runs the switchboard, so she's like in communications and that level, and then he's at communications running the radio station. So they just happen to be at places that is where they're interacting with this thing, and happen to be at a key point where they can dig and like find out more. So they just kind of like, it's more about, like I was saying, just their adventure of discovery and like the wonder. So it's not like a scary, I feel like I would love to see what you're describing too, like a modern movie with more wonder in the science fiction, because nowadays all sci-fi is like horror and like dystopia, and like I think that's why they probably chose to set it in the 50s, because it was just more, it was a different viewpoint than modern times.
Movies about wonder are typically set with kids as the lead.
Definitely. A
So
lot. Yeah.
I think that might have taken me out of it. If it was kids in the lead, it would have made more sense, because the kids are naturally kind of outcast.
Well, they were
from the rest
kids.
of...
I mean, they were at high school.
Were they high school? I thought Everett was...
they were high schoolers.
Okay, well, in the 1950s world that they created, and that era of America, high school is really kind of the pinnacle of your life in that
Right.
in that world. So they weren't really kids, like they were.
Well, back then, younger kids had more responsibility.
Yeah.
So like the fact that they were being treated like adults in this world made more sense than like kids that were supposed to be that age now wouldn't be like
Right.
in such positions necessarily.
But I still go back to like there needed to be some element in all of these wonder stories. There needs to be some element of outcast because
Well, they were nerds, but they were accepted. They weren't really
exactly. They were
outcasts,
too
yeah.
accepted. They established them as like the nerdy kids into like these things, but there was no tension created from that. There was no.
So you wanted a Biff character to like beat him to beat him up before the aliens
It's
show
like
up?
they had the Biff character. He was also the Biff character. Like
Who?
Everett was also the Biff character. Like he took that guy's trombone for no good reason other than just to be a dick about it. Like
I didn't catch that.
at the very beginning, like the guy's like, he's like, I think there might be something with the trombone. I used to play trombone. Let me look at it. And like he gets him to throw his trombone down to him.
Oh, and he just hides it or something?
Yeah, he just like hides it.
Why do you have Rennie's horn?
He needs to be punished for being a Rennie.
It's like this guy's the
having
nerd
fun.
and the bully of
He's
the
just
school.
having fun. I didn't even catch that was malicious. I thought that he was just putting that trumpet away. That's funny.
So I just didn't buy the characters in that type of story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just think there's certain character traits that need to be present in a wonder-driven type story, or it needs to be kind of explained as to why they're not those characters. I just think it just kind of goes into what you're expecting when you see a movie, and it just kind of throws you off without having an explanation for that being missing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get behind things being missing if I can, feel the value of it intrinsically. Like I was like, if this had been there, I wouldn't have felt this when I watched the movie, but I didn't see the value in not explaining it.
Explaining
Their acceptance in the
community.
in that community.
Yeah. And then the first hint of anything weird is this really long scene where she ends up running the switchboard, and that's where she starts hearing the weird sounds, and they don't know what the sounds are. And that scene, like even if you didn't like them, did you think that scene was well done with the tension and the because it's like one really long take of her just like interacting with everyone on the switchboard, and she's hearing sounds, and she ends up getting a call of someone that's hearing weird sounds and has like weird wind like going on at her house. And she hears the radio gets cut off because she's listening to Everett through the radio. And she ends up calling to him and records the sound, and they find that he picked up the sound on his end too, and they end up trying to investigate where this weird sound is coming from, basically. And that's where like the mystery kicks off, and they're trying to investigate, and they end up getting like calls in that kind of fills them in. But did you want to mention anything about that scene, or?
I don't know. Maybe I'm too used to the like sci-fi device of disturbed radio frequencies to where it didn't really like trigger anything to me. Like or it's not even necessarily a sci-fi device. It just happens, and I didn't even really think much of it. And I would assume that it would just happen in that time. Like it wouldn't spark any sort of.
When she it stood out to her because it wasn't unlike any other like sound that they had heard. And even to me, the reason that scene worked wasn't even because of the sound. I just loved the periodness of it, like seeing how the information would get distributed in this time period and how cut off everyone was. Like, because that becomes an important plot point for later, that everyone in the town basically is at the basketball game.
Yeah.
And no one can really get in touch with anyone. So even if there was an emergency in this town, no one can communicate. Like they're all cut off, and the only reason she even knows that something weird's going on is because she's at this center point where like all the phone lines interact. So she's hearing all the different things that are going on in the town.
That was a cool element, and I didn't really. I mean, I did think about the idea that the town is desolate at this point because everybody's in one place. But you're kind of pointing at that idea of like what goes on in the shadows, like what happens behind the scenes to the people that are running the show. Like how are they doing that? What are the things that you don't see in this world? And that's kind of so that's pretty cool. I liked the kind of switchboard show of like how people communicated back then. I've seen enough movies to kind of know how a switchboard works enough, but I think like for a modern audience or a younger audience who's never seen anything like that in a movie, understanding like that's how people used to communicate and how inefficient it is.
Hey, Josie, listen, it's Faye. Is Officer Pruitt or Boker around?
He's not here, and Mr. Pruitt left with him.
Well, they didn't answer at the station. No one's at the station?
No, they were here, but a trucker just came in off the highway and reported something.
What?
He didn't say, but it whipped the wind up and made him spill his truck, so avocados are all over the road.
Is Officer Abbott around? Off duty? Because isn't Judy cheerleading?
Yeah, that was kind of cool. I guess you.
Hey, I got a kind of cool out of you. All right, now we're talking.
Same sound came from her line, but I couldn't get her name or anything. She didn't sound hurt. What should I do? Winnie?
Also, now that we're talking about things that are kind of cool.
Yeah.
The tracking shot in it.
Yep, that was like right around that same time in the movie too. I love that.
Yeah.
And when it really showed the connection of the town, like this is how far away this building is from this building, and then let's go to this other building, and you see the physicality of it. Like you can kind of feel then, okay, like everything's really close, but it's like far enough away that like you wouldn't have any idea what was going on, at this other location.
I also thought that was a cool break from the format.
It was just different.
Yeah.
Just play music, and all of a sudden we're just like on a tracking shot. Going
Yeah,
to
it was
this
like
other...
that in the 1950s. That would not have been achievable. That type of shot.
That was a very modern.
That was a modern
thing.
Shot, and like that was cool. Like when I watched that, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like this is a breakaway from just being kind of a slave to the format of 1950s sci-fi Twilight Zone style.
Yeah.
It was different, and
very first time director. Like you were saying, that feels like something a Tarantino or someone would come up with. Just some bizarre shot where you're like, wait, how did they even like get that shot? Like what is happening here?
Yeah. And intentionally different. Like I was saying, okay, there was definitely a choice made here to do this, and that part I found interesting. I don't know that there was much payoff to it. I mean, I get the idea that it showed the town, it showed the connection to the town, and it gave you the layout, which would be important later. Kind of understanding how she moved around the town and how she, her instinct to run everywhere.
Which was really funny. What are you doing, Faye? She just starts running. We have a car.
Yeah.
Goddamn Faye! Get in!
I also thought that was a cool break from the format.
It was just different. Just play music, and all of a sudden we're just like on a tracking shot. Going to
it was like that in the 1950s. That would not have been achievable. That type of shot.
That was a very modern.
That was a modern
thing.
Shot, and like that was cool. Like when I watched that, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like this is a breakaway from just being kind of a slave to the format of 1950s sci-fi Twilight Zone style.
Yeah.
It was different, and
very first time director. Like you were saying, that feels like something a Tarantino or someone would come up with. Just some bizarre shot where you're like, wait, how did they even like get that shot? Like what is happening here?
Yeah. And intentionally different. Like I was saying, okay, there was definitely a choice made here to do this, and that part I found interesting. I don't know that there was much payoff to it. I mean, I get the idea that it showed the town, it showed the connection to the town, and it gave you the layout, which would be important later. Kind of understanding how she moved around the town and how she, her instinct to run everywhere.
Which was really funny. What are you doing, Faye? She just starts running. We have a car.
Yeah.
But no, I like that. And I think it just went more to showing like setting up the town itself as like a physical place, like in that whole world building. I think that was the main reason for it. And like you said, it was just a good like change of pace. Like, and it built anticipation. And you're like, what's going on here? Like, and you could kind of imagine like in like a Spielberg movie or something, like the POV angle from the alien's point of view. Like, are we seeing like an alien like running? You're kind of like, you feel like you're in the middle of something, or like you'd see ET's like point of view and like crawling around or something.
Yeah,
like
even
that.
as tracking shots go, it was different. Like it was low angle, so it did kind of feel like it was a point of view shot.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think they literally just put a camera on a golf or like a go-kart.
Yeah.
He literally just rode a go-kart like from point A to point B, and then like spliced some shots together so it wouldn't look so like shaky. But yeah, I don't know how they went through the building though. I couldn't tell. That might have been digital. I don't know what they did, because the shot goes all the way across into a basketball game that's happening.
But the doors were open, right?
Yeah, but then it flows up, out, into a window, out the window, and then flows back down.
Oh, was it a drone shot?
It had to have been split, something
1950s?
split together. Yeah, something split together to make that. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah.
And then it goes back, and we go to another location, to the radio station or something like that. But yeah, I love that shot.
So so we're going through
that was
this.
kind of cool.
That was kind of cool. We're at the same point in the movie where weird things are starting to happen.
Yeah, and they're starting to run around because they get a call, like we talked about earlier, from Billy. By the way, spoilers at this point. We haven't really spoiled too much because there's a lot of mystery in this movie at this point.
Yeah.
But pretty much spoilers for going ahead if you didn't already know. But yeah, so Billy starts telling them and that was the other thing I like about this is like all the information we get about what is happening is all secondhand, really unverifiable, just stories. So we really don't know the truth ever. By the end of the movie, we don't know the truth of any of it. It's all, you have to kind of make up your own mind. But Billy calls in who, like you said, was on a detail for the military or some sort of government agency. And he would have weird jobs, but he remembers a job where there was this weird machine and they had to bury it or unbury it. I'm not even sure what they were doing with it. And he heard that same sound. So they end up piecing the sound together with someone else that he knew that did a similar detail that had recorded the sound and sent it to all their old buddies. And one of the buddies happened to live in that town. So that ends up leading to Faye running around trying to get the tapes that she heard about from this guy who had died and trying to prove something to themselves. Because even then, like, what are they really proving? But they want to find that there's a recording that matches what they just heard today.
Yeah.
From, like, many years before.
Because I guess, that recording does verify
his story a little bit. Yeah.
Because when I was listening to the story, I was like, what are we, like, Inception 3 dreams deep now? And, like, how far we're going into, like, hearsay stories.
No, you're right. And it is all hearsay. And I think some of the narrators we hear stories from are more and less reliable than others, too. Because, like, they end up, let's see, what happens after that? So they end up going to, they end up running back to because there was all issues of the phone line getting dropped, and because she's with Everett, she can't control the phone lines anymore, so they have to go back there. And they end up getting a call from a woman who says she has more information. So there's like breadcrumb trails where the movie just keeps piecing out like little bits to you, and they get more and more excited as they like learn more information. And then what did you think about the couple? There was like a couple that they meet outside of her thing there where they're just like freaked out like they are, and they're just like super like hyped. They end up like yelling a bunch of stuff at each other.
Call me Gerald now. Please call me Gerald.
I'm Everett. This is Faye. We just had the power cut off at the radio station.
You heard the radio station?
Yeah, I knew how it hits from 7 to 11. Were you
Drove
listening?
80 miles an hour all the way to that.
Yeah, he does the old stuff. I didn't know
I just thought, I don't know, I didn't think anything about the couple other than that they were narrative devices.
Yeah.
They were just like there to verify that something was happening, and then they kind of verified the lady's story at the end. And that's really their only purpose to me.
Right. Well, and I think like everything in the movie, it's about world building too. It's just like, look at how friendly people are, in this town.
Just hopping in each other's cars.
They're just best friends.
And,
even though they don't really know each other specifically. They feel like they know each other because they live in this town together. So they just very trusting, and like they kind of like set up a plan just like haphazardly, like we'll meet you back here, blah blah blah. Cool. They're like all just kind of doing things and being friendly and like helping each other out in this weird situation. So I like that. But like you said, they're kind of like. They're there to like serve a purpose,
right?
For sure.
I don't know. And when I think about like if the story were from a kid's perspective, that element wouldn't have been there. And there was just something missing to keep me interested in what was going on. Like the suspense and the wonder was not unique enough to me to hold my interest. Like it didn't have me wondering because I've seen these movies before. So like. For them, I understand them. I guess I understand them being, mystified by all of these things. But for a 2019 audience, that's not mystifying.
Right.
And so maybe the purpose of the story was just to highlight a different kind of world or something like that. But that just wasn't interesting enough to me.
Well, that's why I enjoyed it, because I like experienced it from their point of view, more than mine. I was just like, what would this have been like, to be back then? And I felt like that's what the movie did better than anything, was really put you in their shoes, like in that world. And that's why I like that it took so much time setting up the world and feeling how everyone in that town kind of gets along and their role in the town. It just made it all feel more real and like helped me empathize, with where they would be coming from with all this stuff. But I see where you're coming from. Totally.
I mean, yeah, because I usually like that era, that period in a setting. Like, I really like that. I mean, I really like Mad Men for that reason.
Yeah.
Just the style of it was probably like 70% of my enjoyment of Mad Men was the style of the time. But it also was written for a modern audience.
Definitely. It's a very modern show.
So this, like Vast of Night, I may have enjoyed more had it been made in 1950.
Yeah, I get
like,
you.
if it was made in 1950, I would think, oh, wow, this is groundbreaking, this is really cool. But had it, like, being that it was made in 2019, I was like, what's the point of this?
So it was too old-fashioned for you, basically, is what you're saying.
The story was too old-fashioned.
Yeah.
The style had some unique elements to it, and the style is still very valid. But the story was old-fashioned.
Yeah, I would say even if you find the plot boring, it's still an enjoyable movie just from the visuals and the production, like the music and the way it's pieced together was just. Really,
I agree with
really
that.
cool.
I feel like if I had watched it on mute, I would have enjoyed it more.
That's funny. Well, we're close to the end of the movie, so they go to the lady's house. What did you think of the weird old lady that that wanted to come tell them more secrets?
That was the first time. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of jumping ahead. The old lady. What did I think of her?
Because she kind of creeps them out. Like when they first walk up on her, she's like reading some enchantment and seems like a witch or something.
Yewe rafu oyek ateli wood na netzol. Yewe rafu oyek ateli wood na netzol.
And towards the end of the conversation, she really freaks Everett out, where he's just like, all right, because she ends the conversation by saying, like, will you please take me with you? Like,
right.
She's imagining that there's these things that are going to take her up like her son.
Right.
And I think the main important thing that she tells them is about it's almost like using people as radios, where she thinks that these things can like use some sort of signals to get into your brain and control you, and made her son supposedly say these words which she is reciting to them. And then she wants to go with them, and they get freaked out and get the hell out of Dodge.
And I want you to take me to the ship.
Hey, let's go. Now.
There was some interesting story elements to that, and that's where it got to a point where it started to resonate as a 2019 audience member. But
what about that resonated?
The idea of I don't want to say mind control, but
I think there's more.
There
mind
are
control,
definitely, like, not from a conspiracy idea, but there are things that we don't pay attention to that do have influence over the way that we think.
Totally.
And so that was a cool statement on our current state. But the character herself, I'm trying to go back to what I thought of her. I did not like.
Did you buy her story? You think she was?
I mean, as throughout the way that the story had gone, like, as an audience member, I bought her story.
Yeah.
I did not think that they should have bought her story, and that was one of my favorite parts for Everett, was that he didn't buy her story.
He kind of stood up to it.
Yeah.
But then I kind of had second thoughts later. Like, he was like, but wait, let me test this out.
Yeah.
Because when they escape, I say escape, when they escape from her, when they leave her house, they end up there's like a really random scene where she has to pick up her like sister. Who was the little girl that she ends up grabbing?
Yeah, it was her sister. Her cousin was supposed to be watching her.
Which was also
that was Faye had to go pick up her.
Faye randomly, and I don't.
Which had been talked about earlier, so there theoretically should have been some more tension around that, because there was this thing kind of hanging in the balance of, I can't get in touch with the girl that's supposed to be watching my sister.
Right.
Can you go check on them? And then we don't hear anything about that until she remembers way later in the
She
movie.
like panics about it.
Yeah.
And goes to grab her, and then they end up running into the couple again. Is that how the order happens? And then they're just super excited, telling them about what they've been through so far, and then I think Everett starts to just get weird vibes from the people in the car, and so he ends up pulling up the tape because the lady, before they leave, the old lady, she's like, take these words, like these words will protect you, the words that she wrote down that her son said.
Her theory was that those words cast a spell that on the people that are being controlled by the aliens or whatever up there.
Right.
And so
when she said the words back to her son like fell out of his trance and like started like looking up at the ceiling and like it paused him from whatever weirdness was going on with her son. So she's like, say these words if you meet people tonight.
Yeah.
But Everett's like, no, I don't want you. You're freaking me out.
And he didn't actually, I don't think he intended to play that. What happened was they had talked to those people before they went to meet with her. And then they asked what came of that. And he was telling them, and then she's like, oh yeah. And he started playing the recording for some reason.
Well, I thought he was looking for those words specifically.
Oh, was he trying
he
to...
backtracks and then he listens and then finds that specific part.
So he was testing her.
I think
her
he
story.
was. Like he found that part and rewinds it a couple times until he gets the part where she's saying the words. And then when her recording starts playing back, the people in the car like kind of go into a trance, and he like runs the car off the road basically, and they end up like running away from them.
Matter of fact, she read us this. Hold on.
But that was like where it kind of validated her story, and you're like, oh, there's something true in there. Like, I feel like most of what she says might not even be true, but there was like enough truth in there that it like ended up helping them out.
And it explained, like, she was reading that when they walked in.
Yes.
And
she was testing them. That's true. I didn't think about that.
That explained that, because that was kind of a weird introduction of that character.
Yep.
But it was also, that's where I started to really have a problem with the logic of the story, because it was saying that some people are under the trance and some people aren't. But I haven't seen what's different about the people that aren't and the people that are. Like, I haven't, it seems like...
Well, they're not like zombies or something, like... And that's what the lady described, too, that it was subtle, that it was stuff you didn't even realize you were being manipulated about. At least this was her theory, having obsessed about it her whole life. So you can take that with a grain of salt, but I do think that that's hinted at throughout the movie in little bits, that maybe the whole town is actually under some kind of control, because during that panning shot where they go through the basketball game, everyone is like very zombie-like, even to the point of where I didn't notice this, but when I rewatched the movie, I watched it with a friend, and they're doing the same play like multiple times. Like, if you notice, they're literally repeating the play, like they're just like going through the motions.
Oh, okay.
And that's what the old lady talks about, that where they do this on nights where people are distracted and where they can easily like go in and out without being noticed. So that there's something about where they're kind of maybe not fully controlling people, but just subtly saying, no, you want to be at this game, like stay at the game, like do this thing so we can like mess with other people who aren't at the game, is the idea.
So they're like
that I got with
the
it.
creatures of habit that, you know, there was no thought in their head about going to the game. It was just what you do, and it was like, those are all the people that do that. And because of Faye and Everett's situation as being, you know, the radio host, the switchboard operator,
they had other responsibilities.
Which kind of made them immune to that.
Or you could think of it like in Star Wars, where they're like, your mind control won't work on me, Jedi. Like, some people are more weak-willed than others. They're more like susceptible to it. You can you know, think about it however you want, but I think there's enough evidence that I think that's kind of where they were going.
Well, it had to be circumstance that made them different, because otherwise they weren't that different from the people of the town. Like, they weren't, like I said, they weren't outcasts or anything like that. They were just circumstantially in a different position than everybody else, because they had to kind of pull the strings to keep everything running, while everybody else just kind of mindlessly filtered into
No, I like that.
So I get that, and I guess that's what made them different and not subject to the to that kind of enchantment spell, I guess we'd call it.
Yeah, or de-enchantment. I'm not even sure. Yeah, whatever it does, it messes with your brain if you're under this control, I guess. Yeah. And then that's the other reason, because I thought that took me out of the movie at first when I saw it the first time was what are the odds that they ended up in the woods? Because at the end they're at this specific part of the woods where there's like burnt trees, where there's obviously been something going through here, and they end up finding like holes, that it had like some sort of craft you could imagine, had come through the trees.
Yeah.
And it seemed like that the people that were driving the car were specifically taking them to this place. Like that it wasn't an accident that they ended up at this spot, and that he stopped them, by reading the words, but by that point they were already basically where they needed to go. And so they, at the very end, spoilers if you didn't know, they basically get abducted by whatever these things are, and they show some spacecrafts at the end. But they basically end up, it's almost like the imagery was very much like Jesus and Jesus's birth, like his parents. It's like a little baby with the young father and young mother that would have been about the same age as like Mary and Joseph, like getting taken up, basically. It was almost like, or you could think of like Adam and Eve, like they're like something that's going to go seed something else. I don't know, but they get taken up at the end. But what did you think of the ending and then how that all played out?
There wasn't much payoff in the ending for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I hadn't been taking the same things from the movie as you.
It definitely leaves a lot to your imagination at the end, other than seeing the spaceships or whatever it was.
When the old lady tells the story, her son gets taken up. So whoever is controlling their mind is interested in the people under their spell for some reason. So why would they be the ones to get taken up?
Yeah, I don't know. It's beyond my understanding.
And I think of it in terms of like story-wise, like what's the metaphor? What's the message here?
Yeah.
How is this wrapping up, the whole story?
No, I get, and I think,
other than, they had been talking about wanting to get out of the town, which also didn't make any sense to me. But
True. And I think that was just more, again, that was like the 1950s thing of like, it's hard to even know what's going on outside of your town. And she was really into technology, and like all the technology that she listed from that magazine was about travel or communication. Which is exactly what the old lady and everyone was saying. Whatever these things are, they have advanced travel and communication. So it was like her whole obsession just happened to like resolve in whatever these things were. They had kind of what she wanted, maybe not in the way that she wanted it or knew, it was like a genie that you make a wish and like, oh, I really want to get out of this town and like, I really am interested in technology. And then it gets like fulfilled in this really bizarre way of like, okay, well now maybe it's aliens or
you
something.
You want it out of this town, or here you go.
Out. Yeah, like so. I do think that there are through lines. They're just very subtle.
Yeah.
But they're not. And I get your complaint because it's not super character driven so much as like idea driven. Even though it is her character to be into ideas, it's like very autistic. It's like, it's kind of like, because I'm like into nerdy things. So I kind of connected with her like desires about technology and the future and futurism, kind of ideas. So I connected with that for sure. But it wasn't like a super, like, it wasn't like a Marty McFly, like, I want to get a girl, and like, it wasn't like regular character motivations or like maybe superhuman human character motivation. I don't know.
But they were traditionally what people would consider nerds.
Yeah.
The things that
Very
they were
much
interested in. But the nerd moniker really comes from your relationship to society. And I didn't get that feel from them in their relationship to society. So, like, I get anybody wanting to see new things.
They weren't overly outcast.
They weren't overly outcast. They didn't really have a ton, like, if they were interested in new
about
things.
Everett's family, but was Faye have a single mom? Was that her situation?
It seemed like, yeah.
So there was some, but yeah, they didn't give really any family dynamic or like what was, you know.
Like, all things considered, they seem to be doing pretty well for themselves.
They're doing very well, regardless of their home life. Like,
Yeah.
They both had jobs, and yeah, like you said, we're going to school and respected in the community.
Yeah.
So why did they want to leave that community? You know.
Yeah.
There wasn't like a full, you know, motivation given to that for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah, I totally agree. I just enjoy the mythology of it and the like. You know, I like looking at it from an archetypal point of view of like, you know, when you have to fill in the blanks. Like this movie doesn't really tell you that these are aliens. It doesn't tell you really what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna take whatever like time period you're watching this in, and you're gonna put your thoughts over it, because you could see it as aliens. You could see it as some sort of demonic thing. You could see it as personally, I kind of see it as like it's the government themselves using technology that no one knows about, and they're kind of manipulating the town and experimenting on people or who knows what, you know. So you can kind of see it from multiple ways, and I think there are layers to it. But on the surface, it is very simplistic, you know, by modern day, you know, movie standards. So I totally get your vibes about it. But I haven't changed your mind about it. I think.
No, you haven't. You haven't changed my mind. But I mean, it's a very difficult task to convince someone that they enjoyed
very
something
subjective,
that
man.
they
It's
didn't
very
enjoy.
subjective. Nah.
But you did point out some things that I did like about it that I didn't necessarily realize I liked about it. Overall, I still was not a fan of the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was and it was definitely interesting the way that it was done, and its
the
place
style.
in a 2019, you know, catalog of movies, and the way that it was done. And yeah, I don't even know what that statement meant. What I just threw movie words together.
No, it's good. I mean, that's what you got to do when you're looking at cinema.
But it. And I would definitely be interested to see what the director does in the future. I'll definitely watch his movies because he definitely takes care in the style of what he's doing, and
for sure,
and puts that together meticulously. I think some work can be done story-wise, but
yeah, like you said, I can see more work on the characters themselves, like maybe something more character-driven in the future. This was more like event mystery-driven, and the characters were like secondary. It was more about the town and the time period and the mystery of it than the actual characters. Although I do think, we didn't even mention this, but the actors I think were awesome. Like I think regardless, I don't know if you agree, but regardless of what I thought like she did an amazing job, especially like carrying like a lot of those scenes that's just talking. It's just dialogue, and like you feel every bit of it. At least I did. You know, I thought they did a really good job of that as well. So didn't like that.
I mean, are we done? Because I could go on about the acting, but I don't think there's much to be said, because I don't think that my problems with the acting were the fault of the actors.
Right.
It was.
It was more the script.
It was the writing and the. So they did the best with what they had. I thought.
Cool. You want to like give us a summation of it, or I think we kind of get.
I mean, I don't think that I'm authorized to tell anybody if they should or shouldn't see the movie, but these are two different views of, and we've ruined it, basically, for anyone who hasn't seen it. We've told the entire story.
I'll put spoiler in the title so people know.
Maybe we should try in the future to avoid spoilers, but
nah.
I don't think that. I don't know. I don't know if we're coming in a position of trying to convince people to see a movie, or just to say this is, you know, a movie you may have seen. This is what we thought of it for what that's worth.
Movie analysis, and you know, I think it's always better to watch these sort of things after you watch the movie. But because I think, and maybe you disagree too, but I think what we want to do with this is more just like getting in depth into movies, what we love about them, what we don't like about them, and analyzing it from like a filmmaking kind of perspective, and what as an audience like we love about it. So, you know, we're gonna spoil stuff, we're gonna go into details know, about it. So this isn't like a watch this before you go see a movie thing, although maybe some people will use it for that. But this is more like you want to get in depth and like talk about a movie, you know, that you've seen.
I think. What I enjoy about talking about movies is the fact that it is a good way it's more of a self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of having a conversation about things that you value and don't value in a very safe way, because nobody really cares
True.
what you think about a movie.
Yeah, it's not like politics or religion.
Yeah,
It's like,
and you can kind of broach those subjects through through movies, but it's a lot less threatening. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot less dangerous of a conversation, because in the end, like, it's my opinion of a movie, and I'm talking about it from the perspective of how a movie is put together, not necessarily the ideas that, you know, I value or it values or anything like that. So I think that's kind of what I would like to do with these conversations, is just have like real human conversations, but through the structure of movie analysis. I think
from just
that'll
two
be
guys
fun
that
to
love
do.
movies and
Yeah.
have passionate opinions about it.
That's
So,
really the only thing I know
well
how to
said.
talk about. So
Yeah.
like I have to talk about everything through that.
Yeah, no, you said, I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, that's perfect. Well, thank you guys for checking out our first episode. I'm not sure what the next movie will be, but you'll check it out the same bat time, same bat channel. And you have a great day, everybody.
Yeah,
thanks
you.
for checking it out. Like,
All right.
subscribe, and thanks Adam for coming out.
Thanks for having me. My very first podcast.
Hell yeah, bro.
I always refused, but you
I tricked him
enticed
into
me
it.
with
I
the
tricked
idea
him
of talking
into
about
it.
movies.
I was like, hey, Adam, movies. What do you think? That got him. All right, guys, have a good one.
She said they're out there. People in the sky. And they have advanced radio and communication. And they take people up.